Sanberg. Dr. Sanberg is the president of the National Academy of Inventors and the co-founder and chair of the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame. As an inventor, he holds more than 167 US and foreign patents and has authored more than 720 scientific publications. At Florida House, we have the pleasure of hosting the Cade Museum's In a State of Innovation, an exhibition about our state's incredible and widespread contribution to innovation. As you can see, the exhibit is behind me right now. And each week, we're going to go ahead and show a different portion of the exhibit so y'all can get a really full view of what the exhibition looks here at Florida House. It even highlights some of the speakers that you're going to hear from during this series of talks, and this exhibition and the series itself would not have been possible without the guidance from Stephanie Bales, President and Executive Director of the Cade Museum for Creativity and Invention. I'd like to welcome Stephanie to say a few words about this project.
Thank you, Sarah, for that introduction. The Cade Museum for Creativity and Invention is thrilled to partner with the Florida House on both this exhibit and the speaker series. And now I invite each of you to think for a moment of the names Edison, Tesla, and even Elon Musk. And what do you think of? I imagine individuals who are dreamers of big dreams, problem solvers, and inventors. The Cade Museum's namesake, Dr. James Robert Cade, was a professor and a physician who was also the lead inventor of Gatorade. His invention story serves as the Cade Museum's inspiration to deliver children and adults unprecedented access to world-class inventors and visionaries through our exhibits and programming, like that which we are doing today. A guest to the Cade Museum will never have the exact same experience twice, as the activities and themes rotate on a regular basis. You can also engage with the Cade Museum through our Cade Prize for Innovation, as well as by listening to our Radio Cade podcast. At the Cade Museum, we believe each of us has an inherent ability to invent, to develop new answers and create innovative solutions to today's problems. To do so, we must each tap into our own inventive mindset. Inventors and their inventions, like Paul Sanberg today, have the potential to change the world. Come visit us and discover your own inventor's journey. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'd also like to recognize Jamie Spurrier, the program manager from the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame. Jamie, if you'd like to say a few words about the Hall of Fame, that would be great.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that introduction. And also, Stephanie, that was an amazing discussion about innovation, and definitely thought-provoking about innovation and what it means to the betterment of society. Good afternoon, everyone. I just first want to thank actually Florida House and Cade Museum for Creativity and Innovation for this wonderful opportunity for us. I think it's a perfect collaboration and celebration of innovation in the state of Florida. And honestly, that's really the heart of the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame, to celebrate the spirit of innovation in Florida, and also to serve as a hub for the innovation ecosystem here. So we were founded in 2013 by our guest today, Dr. Paul Sanberg, along with the then University of South Florida president, Judy Genshaft, with the intention of recognizing and celebrating Florida's vibrant innovation ecosystem and the remarkable inventors in our state. All of our 58 inductees have significantly advanced the quality for life in America. And it's our mission to encourage other individuals of all ages and backgrounds to strive toward the betterment of society through continuous groundbreaking innovation. We are driven to support a culture of creativity here, one that fuels innovation, drives economic growth, and encourages continued investment in Florida. And I know Dr. Sanberg will speak more about his journey to founding the statewide program, but I want to just encourage everybody who is ever in the Tampa area to come to the Research Park at the University of South Florida to visit our museum, where we exhibit inventions from our amazing inductees. And also every year we hold an annual gala and induction ceremony to celebrate each class's induction. And this year, the induction ceremony will be held on November 5th in Tampa at the Marriott. And if you want more information, feel free to visit our website. Thank you again so much for this opportunity. Sarah, back to you.
Thank you both so much for the work that you're doing to make this exhibit possible and the series. It's really incredible to see, how inspiring Invention is in Florida and connecting it to Florida House and also bringing it to DC. But to go ahead and begin the conversation, I would like to introduce our moderator, Richard Miles. Richard Miles co-founded the Cade Museum and served president of the board of directors. Mr. Miles has had a long distinguished career in foreign service around the world. He received a BA in Russian Studies from the University of Washington in 1987 and an MS in foreign service from Georgetown University in 1993. He currently serves as chairman of the Trinity Forum and as board member of the Prison Fellowship International. I'd like to welcome Richard Miles.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And also thank you to Florida House, Florida Inventors Hall of Fame for organizing this. And I'm really happy to have as my first interview with my friend, Paul Sanberg. Paul and I first met at the first induction ceremony of the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame back in 2014, when my father-in-law, James Robert Cade, was inducted. And since then, Paul has been a champion of and a partner with the Cade Museum. We're very grateful for that support. Well before we had a beautiful building or any programs, Paul said, "What can I do to help?" And I believe, Paul, last time we saw each other was in Mexico City in 2019 when I was moderating a panel on innovation, which included Paul, and we talked about Florida. So old times, we're back together.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, Richard. Really appreciate that.
So Paul, you're like Florida man, except in a good way. But before we talk about you, let's talk about the first part of that phrase, which is Florida. Let's talk about how did Florida become one of the national leaders, even international, you could argue, in innovation? I mean, we used to be known mostly for great oranges, beautiful beaches, a nice place to retire. So what happened?
Well, that's why I'm sitting here under a palm tree, because I think that's what people mostly think of Florida. In many ways. And yet, really, Florida is, a nexus of innovation in the United States and the world. We have amazing organizations here. We've had, of course, the Kennedy Space Center, or in the old days, Cape Canaveral. And we've had great military presence as far as Special Operations Command and these things that do a lot of invention of their own. A prolific entrepreneur network and great companies. It's really, this state is not what a lot of people think. And I like that Florida man. I think, I was born in Florida and, down in Miami area. And I was born at a time when I was just a few years old, Explorer 1 was, launched as the first satellite. From Florida, and then a few years later, Alan Shepard went up into space as the first American. And these are things as a child that I remember and celebrated and we talked about in school and everything. And so Florida, as an entrepreneurial, creative state, has just been ingrained in me. And so it's a mission, and it's a great state to have that. I think Floridians are not afraid to take risk. I think that we're problem solvers. We'll look for the best way to do things. We may not. Some people may think, well, you're under a tree here, and so therefore you're just going to hang out and get some sun. But Isaac Newton, didn't he under a tree there and the apple fell? And so maybe the coconut fell years ago. And I think what you see is great Floridians that come up with wonderful ideas. And maybe they have the time. Maybe a lot of them have the time to be creative because of the environment that we're in. Because clearly environment, has an effect on all of our behaviors that we do. So thank you. That's my answer. And I think we're just
So, Florida is a relatively young state, and a lot of people don't know that a lot of our, economic activity or sort of economic preeminence didn't really begin until sort of the middle of the 20th century. Both Sarah and Jamie noted about your establishment of the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame with others. Certainly President Genshift was a great supporter of that, and the National Academy of Inventors. So tell us, what was your thought process when you established those two institutions? Why did you decide to do it in the first place? And was it hard, easy to get those two going?
It's that's a really good do that. I really like Jamie's presentation on the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame. That's a really cool background. I encourage everyone to go. She's done a terrific job. Chloe Bear works with her, has done a terrific job, and Victoria Stewart. And I noticed Judy Lowry's on, and I couldn't have done her help over the years. Just an amazing, amazing person. And for both organizations, I think that she helped me really, help move this forward. And so let me tell you a little bit about why they happened. And, it's always, looking at, do we need a need for something? When we're innovative, it's about, we don't have something necessarily, but we really want to have something. So we come up with a solution. And so our creativity comes to mind. And I was in Washington and had the opportunity to, go there a lot. I went to the Capitol Rotunda, where there's Statuary Hall. I'm sure we've all seen Statuary Hall, if not on, physically on TV. And there's one inventor. There's one inventor in the 100 statues. Each state gets 2 statues, and they pick who they want to be representing them. Well, Florida picked John Gorey, and John Gorey was an inventor. So he's the only inventor of all those 100 people. And he had the first patent on air conditioning. He had malaria and other types of patients up in Pensacola area, or Apalachicola area, and really needed to come up with a solution for a lot of these patients. And so he had that. And I remember in my birth certificate, it says, father's occupation, Bernie's ice delivery. Well, what he did is he took blocks of from one of the keys to go into people's coolers, and eventually had to get a different job because he went out of business, with these big ice cubes. So air conditioning in this happened was, if you look at, I had the opportunity to go to the National Inventor as well. And this was a great, great gala. It's for nationally prominent inventors, both living and deceased. And so I was sitting there, and they have a book that they publish of all these great inventors that have been inducted. And I didn't see any Floridians. And yet now we're the 3rd most populous state. That was, maybe years ago, 7, 8, 9 years ago, could have been a little smaller then, but I didn't understand why. And so when we got back down here, I thought this is an opportunity to show the world that we've got great inventors and not just great climate stuff. So that was how, those are the background that gave really lead to, moving forward to Florida Inventors Hall of Fame. Nationally, we ended up, in academics. So the National Academy of Inventors is one of the nation's academies now that really focuses on trying to show that academics don't just publish or perish, don't just teach, but they are creative and they do innovative and invent. And one of the things I'm 30th year here at USF, in a number of months. And I remember coming down here, I helped start one of the first publicly traded stem cell companies, adult stem cell companies up in Rhode Island. I was a professor at Brown University. Came down here and in the department, in the medical school. And I really couldn't talk about inventing. No one wanted to hear about it. Oh no, we just do what we do, you know, for the good and all that. And you want to be an inventor, you want to make money, and you want to do this, you don't want to do anything else, kind of thing. And so we were very quiet about it. And we were in the closet. Seriously, we were in the closet. And I thought, you know, it's time to get out of the closet. And so I became, senior vice president, head up research at the university. And I thought, how many other people out there have patents? Not just publications, but actually have patented now. And so I said, let's have a lunch. And we ended up having 100 faculty members come to this lunch across the university who had US issued patents in their history or doing it. And they all thought, wow, now I can talk about aspect that I want to maybe start a company, that I want to teach my students how to be entrepreneurial. And so that started it. And eventually, within a few months, actually, we ended up talking to a number of other vice presidents of research across the country, the USPTO up in Washington. And the USPTO said, let's do a National Academy of Inventors. And let's go national with it. Let's get a feel of what academic inventors do. And let's make it so that when they wear an inventor's pin out on campus, they're like little superheroes, you know? So that's what we've been pushing for the last 10 years and it's been going well. I hope that's a long answer, but those are the two reasons.
That's a great answer. And it sets up my next question, which is really, let's talk a little bit about the specific role of universities in fostering innovation in general, and then in Florida, because a lot of people may have the image of an inventor from the early days of the 18th, 19th century. It's, one guy toiling away in the dark of night working on his invention. And then sort of large companies got into it at the beginning of the 20th century and General Electric and so on. But then about the middle of the 20th century, right around the 1960s, all of a sudden you had universities participating in a big way in patents and, as you said, more and more inventors. So how did that play out in Florida? And we tell part of this story at the Cade Museum, the Gatorade story, which is one of those stories that played out. But how did it play out in the rest of Florida? And what role do those research universities play today in this whole innovation economy?
Well, there was a big change in the 80s of a law, from Congress, the Bayh-Dole Act that came in that said universities can own the patents that their faculty do, and on federal dollars. And that made a big difference because now, what it's all about in universities is let's get grants in many ways. Let's get, especially federal grants. And, people want, and part of that is that the government says, okay, but if you have something that looks like it could be patented, could be a product, could be, we want you to do that. And of course, the government wants first right. If they need it for governmental uses, then they have right to it. But the universities then said, okay, well, now we can get folks to start doing that. You saw universities like MIT, you saw great universities around the country that really pushed in those areas. Florida universities took a while to come around, I think. I think the Gatorade story is one of them, for example, in many ways. But I think it took a while to come around where the universities really wanted to participate in this, because they say a faculty member could get a patent and the university say, well, we're not interested in that, you keep it. And they could still do that. But I think what you saw over time was that from the last recession, especially in 2008, 2009, that there was a part of this, actually there's a letter that 200 odd presidents of research universities around the country to the federal government that said, we're going to make entrepreneurship and economic development one of the legs on a stool of our universities. And that's important because there's no greater drivers in many places than universities, especially big, large research universities. They drive a lot of the economy in there. We see it in Tampa, you see it, I'm sure, in Gainesville, a lot of places. And so one of the ways to drive the economy isn't just through education and teaching and salaries and research dollars, but it's also through entrepreneurship and starting companies out there. So that was a big difference. I think the other thing about Florida is that the Board of Governors of Florida moved to a system where it was very much a metric system that, you want to be a really good university, kind of show it to us, show us the metrics, show that you're improving on these metrics. And a lot of the metrics for research just wasn't how many dollars you're getting in for research from, the National Institute of Health. It was how many patents you're doing, how many startup companies you do, how many, people are becoming fellows of the National Academy of Inventors, for example. All these things, come across, what is, and then when you look at the dollar amounts, the federal government actually looks at this. When you look at research grants, they actually have a conversion factor for U.S. Department of Commerce of converting that into an economic driver, how much in the economy we're driving that. And so even the Board of Governors has that as one of their metrics. How much are you driving the economy? How many jobs are you creating? And the more we can teach students and the more we can teach diverse populations to be, because we have so much different creativity from everyone, great ideas, great things that we're doing, the better we're going to do. And so that's kind of what I would say what happened with the universities. Now, let me give you a little bit of news hot off the press. Is that okay, Richard?
Sure, absolutely. We always like to break news here.
Yeah. So today at 10 o'clock, there's press releases out. There was an embargo. And this is, there's a ranking that the Intellectual Property Organization Association does and the National Academy of Inventors. And it is the top 100 universities in the world for US patents. And this includes American universities. And so that came this year, today, and it's out there and you'll see a lot of press on it, I'm sure. And I, I'm as the president of the National Academy of Inventors, and I want to make sure everybody is doing great and really give them a lot of hype. I am Floridian. I'm a native Floridian, and it always makes me feel good when I see something. And I think what you see in the data today from Florida is that, in fact, there were universities that made the top 100 list. And we're talking, 35 or more foreign universities. So now you put it to American universities, and then probably just under half of those universities are private. So if you look at the public universities, we made a big public universities. UF and USF are in the top 15, in the top 10 for public universities. FSU, UCF are all on the list. And you know what's interesting when I look at this? If you look at the University of California, they're always number one. We've done this for a number of years. They come in as number one because they report as a system of universities, because the patents get filed as the assignee to the University of California system. University of Texas is the same way, and they're like number 3, okay? Because their whole system, whether it's Austin or the other universities, do the same. We don't do that in this system, which I think is good because you want to help each university move forward. If you counted just those 5 Florida universities and you looked at the total number of patents, we would be number 2.
Wow.
Right behind University. If you look at the Florida High-Tech Corridor universities, which are UF, USF, and UCF, we're actually more than the Research Triangle in, up in Carolina, with Duke and North Carolina State and UNC Chapel Hill. So we do well. We have a great number of faculty. Again, these are coming from the faculty and students and staff, and they want to invent things and put them out. Long answer, but I wanted to get that out there.
No, that's an excellent point, and we make that a lot in that, the Florida universities, and they've been doing this for a while, right? For 10 years. As you said, if you look at their numbers, they stack up very, very well, more than the Research Triangle, often almost as much as MIT, which is the largest, traditionally been one of the large universities, the UC system, the UT system. And that surprises people, even in Florida and definitely outside of Florida, that and a lot of that is relatively recent. You know, as you said, USF, in particular UCF, have come sort of seemingly out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they're some of the top research universities in the world, which is really an amazing story.
You know, let me add to that really quick, Richard. You know, I agree with you, and it takes a while to change. You know, it takes a while for people to get educated in this. I didn't know anything about full professor until to help start that company in Rhode Island. I knew nothing about patenting. I published but I published them as methods papers in journals. And if I would have known about patents then, I thought, you know, this would be cool to get out there, because then when you have a patent and people need to figure, you know, why it's so important, it gives protection for a number of years to an inventive idea, creative idea, and a potential product. And then that allows investors to come in and help put something in, because they know that if they're going to use their hard-earned money for this invention out there, they need some protection against the competition. And they need to be able to put some money in so that, you know, they can develop it and not get it, you know, taken from someone else. And so I think Florida just has an upward trajectory in this.
And another important point too about patents that I didn't fully understand until somebody pointed out, which is that even if somebody's invention doesn't make a dime, you know, it just doesn't ever, the market doesn't respond, the patent itself still advances the body of knowledge. So other inventors and other researchers, they can take a look at the patent and go, oh, wow, that's right, you can do this in that field. And so you, the holders, again, they may not, most of them actually don't get rich, but so that other inventors can come after them and use their insights.
Absolutely. I'd make that the way for other patents. You have to show, if you come out with a new idea, how it's better than this other patent that's already out there. And a lot of times patents don't make it because the market may not be ready, could be too advanced. You know, you don't, and a lot of times for companies, it's all about the management team too. It's not just the patents, it's about the management team and all that and the money that comes in. But it does pave the way. And people have to realize that even though there may be 100 patents, you know, by a university, not all of them are going to get funded, but they're paving the way for new inventions that may come pop out somewhere else and help the economy somewhere else.
Paul, let's talk about you now. Enough about Florida, right? Let's talk about you. As you mentioned, you inventor. So not just a university bureaucrat, nothing against bureaucrats. I used to be a bureaucrat myself, but you have actually done research. You've gotten patents. You know what that life is like. But then you've seen it from the other side. So before, I want you to describe just maybe a few of your patents that you're maybe the most proud of. But before that, give us a brief synopsis of growing up in Florida. At what point did you were you drawn to or called to a life of research and discovery?
You know, I think ever since I was a kid up down in Miami, and I saw the space race, you know, go on, I was so intrigued by it. Even just, you know, a small little child, I was so intrigued, and I wanted to do that. Never became an astronaut. Too tall, too weak. But you know, I did become a pilot. You know, and that's a big active part of my life. But the whole idea of science always intrigued me. I did well in science in school, and I kept doing that. Even my high school yearbook, when I remember looking at it years later, people signed things, said, "Oh, you know, good luck in, you know, medicine or science or something like that." It was just very. I always liked coming up with solutions. And so, as I said, I published a lot of work as a professor, and a lot of my work were methods, you know, new ways to do things. They were actually some of the early days on, you know, looking at when calculators first came out, you know, for that we could, you know, for this, think of that, I'm that old. And I published some papers on how to turn calculators into use devices to run research with in laboratories and stuff, with new circuit boards and the whole thing. So I think I've always been there, and I've always tried to look for solutions. I've always tried to work with people and help people come up with solutions as well, and teach them. Those things are so important for young faculty and for older faculty. Again, I didn't know anything about patenting till I was senior in my career, and it was just such an eye-opener that you can really make an impact by being an academic and being an entrepreneur.
Great question. Great. Before we go to the Q&A from the viewer as an inventor and someone who's trying to help inventors. So what is the number one way to actually help inventors and entrepreneurs from your lifetime of experience? Is there, I know there's not just one way, but is there something that's more important than other things to make sure that we have this steady pipeline of inventors and entrepreneurs, not just in Florida, but everywhere?
I'm going to answer two things because I didn't finish a couple patents of my own that we were going to talk about, perhaps. And I'm going to answer what you just said. And maybe I can put them together in some sense. I think I'm most proud of the inventions related to helping people with stroke. My father had a stroke and died eventually of another stroke. And I was doing research in cell therapy in the brain at the time. And so I started to look at all the opportunities and started to do things where, is there a way we can repair the brain? And we started to look at a way in which we could, and we're in Florida, so we couldn't work with fetal tissue. Okay. So, were there ways outside of that? And so we looked at bone marrow cells, and we were able to, we were one of the first groups, and we patented it on converting bone marrow cells into brain cells. And that became I think, a really interesting patent that we continued to do. We continued to look at umbilical cord blood-derived cells to treat patients. And then just a week or two ago, my latest patent is, in fact, on using a special plasma from umbilical cord for helping ALS and some other diseases. So those are the areas that I feel really good about. Now, what about taking those forward? Well, that's the same issue that you just asked me, which really was, how do we make a better innovation ecosystem in the state of Florida? And we need a number of things. We need to educate our students. We need to educate them young. We need to educate them when they're in K through 12 and maybe K through middle school, and really move forward and teach them and show them how exciting it is to be creative. They don't have to necessarily invent products, but I've seen these students, we've had contests, I know you have too, for students to come up with new inventions. They're smart, they're creative. We need to get them motivated so that they become the next entrepreneurs. We need to do the college students. We need to do the young fact. We need to move people and the everyday person into that realm of how I want to be an entrepreneur. I think what we've seen with COVID in the pandemic is a lot of people have started their own businesses. It's like, I'm going to do my own business. They're entrepreneurs. So we need to help those people do that. We also need money. That's where I think we fall behind in having funding compared to Silicon Valley, Austin, these kinds of areas. And, that's critical. And so I think it's up to, we have a new Secretary of Commerce, Jamal Soho, who is really good in Florida. We had a session with him that I was part of with the Florida House, and he's just terrific. And, he was saying what he's seeing is the location of investment capital firms and hedge funds in history going on in this country. And a lot of them are moving to Florida. In fact, I was talking recently to a very close friend of mine who has a public company that he's just become president of. And he called me up and said, you know, we can do a lot of this virtual, but we're thinking of putting, you know, maybe a base operation in Florida because of what's going on there. So that's what we need. We need that. The other thing we have in Florida, and we need to take advantage of them. I talked about the youngest ones. We need the oldest ones. We have Fortune 500 companies and other places that come down here and live. And when I know, vice president of research at a university, when I approach these people and I approach them and I say, you know, hey, maybe you can help us. Maybe you could give us advice, you know, maybe, you know, help move things forward. And this is in our business incubator, wherever. Most of them say, yes, you know, we're happy to help. We have that in Florida. And I think we need, so the whole spectrum from young to old.
Great. One anecdote before we turn to Q&A. When we first started our Cade Prize, we had the first 2 or 3 years, actually, one of our finalists consistently was an inventor named Alex Green, and he was working on an energy technology. He was 93 years old, and he had worked on the Manhattan Project, which was really intimidating when you enter in competition with someone who worked on the, you know, the Manhattan Project. But
wow,
he was a great guy, still very active into his 90s. All right, let's go ahead and turn to questions from the viewers. We'll start with Jennifer. She says, do you have a recommended resource to learn how to file a patent, what is needed, etc.? So much info online, some of which is conflicting or seems unreliable. Stephanie already recommended the U.S. Patent Office in the chat, but is there anything you would add to that, Paul, in terms of if somebody's looking to file a patent, you know, what are their first steps?
Yes, good question. Well, the best place to go is the USPTO. The nice thing about the National Academy of Inventors is we're one of 3 honorific organizations under the USPTO: the National Medal of Technology and Innovation, which is given by the President, the National Inventors Hall of Fame, and the NAI. And so I can tell you directly that the USPTO has really good information for potential inventors if you go on their websites and you want to talk to someone. The other thing is look for organizations. You know, the NAI is really an organization in academics, but there are equivalent organizations for independent inventors that are out there. United Inventors Association, a number of these that are very mature organizations that want to help inventors to move forward. You know, look up certain patent firms. I'm not going to mention any patent firms, for example, but people can do patents on their own, you know, especially the first application. You know, there's ways to do it, but I would contact the EU. They have the lines to do that. But great question. And also, there's no reason you can't go to one of our great universities here to their tech transfer offices. I'm sure that they could put you in the right direction too. I know that the USF office, I know the head of that office, if someone called him, he'd be very happy to respond and put him in the right direction.
Shifting gears here a bit, the next question is about stem cell research technology. I'm not sure I'd credit the question, but it says, what specific applications in neuroscience are you most looking forward to working in? And the predicate of the question is due to advancements in research technology. So,
question. Well, you know, my family, you know, clearly has cardiovascular issues, you know, in our history, and you know, so those are areas that I like working in. I think and so it's a good question. You know, stroke is very an important area. Cardiovascular disease. We've published and patented some issue, you know, some stem cell work on in heart. Cognitive disorders. I think mental health and cognitive disorders are going to be a major part in the future. And the more we do on that, the better. It's a good question. And I think I'm going to take that question to talk about patents again a little bit. and go back to what you were saying, Richard, that not all patents are going to get licensed and make money, just like not all publications, probably most publications only get 1 or 2 citations at the most, and here they spend all their life publishing these things. When you do, what we found is that, this may not work as well in stroke, but my God, look at the effects we're getting. We've looked at it in traumatic brain injury, or we've looked at it in here. These things are transferable. And that's the nice thing about medicine. A lot of times, old drugs or other approaches can have ways in which they may help, in other diseases. So that's the thing about patents too, is that, some market that you may want to do may not work for you, but that same patent or the same type of approach you're doing may work great in another market.
Yeah, I mean, that is our experience working with vendors at Cade is, and we often tell them this coming out of the prize competition, which maybe they didn't play. It's like, give it time, go back, tweak what you have, or maybe you'll think of something new. Next question is Dale's, our very own from Cade Museum. What is the first piece of advice you would give to your younger self as it relates to developing new ideas, products, or companies?
To my younger self, I would say learn about patents, learn about intellectual property when I'm young. Okay. I'd say, there's a whole different world there. And just don't, I published a lot of papers in my life, and I wish I would have put efforts into helping start my students, others, and doing companies, and those things. I just think that really, I think that's what it's like back then. And I'd also tell myself, be more patient. I used to think that a scientist was like an Olympic athlete, that you just devote hand to it and stuff. Other world. And I think you have at your life, and you have to look at what makes you happy as well. And just be a Doogie Howser. I know that's old fashioned for a lot of the young people on here, but don't try to just do everything you can as young as you can. Focus in doing things that make you happy. Focus in, and you know what? Creative you are. I'm convinced of it. The more happy you are on you and all this, the more creative you'll be, and the better result you'll see.
That is a great answer, Paul, and it tabs with a lot of answers I've gotten from the other, and it's some version of, you need to pause sometimes, you need to rest your brain, and then sometimes out of that rest comes a new period of creativity and sort of, really, but if you're nose to the grindstone the entire time, a lot of times you just cannot see what's right in front of you. Yeah. One final question from Carmen Hurtado, also on the staff of the Cade Museum. Where do you see innovation going in the next 5 years?
It's a good question. I'm only going to go up. And I think it's going to go up because we're a great market. We're a growing population. We're a population that's growing with younger people as well. There's a real need. The technology, you look at the Generation Z and the millennials. I love technology. And there's a real want for technology, a real way. You see this, you just look at Tampa, all the incubators and the startup areas. It's incredible. And the amount of people that want to move here. It's cheaper to live here in Florida than it is in California and other places. You remember the person I talked to may want to move here. One of the reasons is it's cheaper to live, and it's cheaper to do things here. That's really good. And what's encouraging too at the universities is they are moving forward. Even if in budget times it may be difficult right now because of the pandemic and issues like that, we have leaders that are entrepreneurs, and we have leaders who want to move things forward and to teach our students. And And you look at Florida State, just hired a president. He was vice president of research at Harvard University. Had my position at USF, but at Harvard, great person. You know, he has many patents, started companies, all this kind of stuff. And he's a fellow of NAI. That's nice. And our president, very much an entrepreneur in many ways at USF. UCF, another inventor, you know, an engineer who's also a fellow of NAI. So you're starting to see these types of leaders come into universities. And I'm seeing this more and more across the nation, is the type of president they want to have, especially for universities where these universities play such an enormous effect on the as an economic driver in their community. I'm very optimistic about Florida.
Paul, this has been a great conversation. I just want to note, on a call that had people from all over Florida, we didn't talk about any football once. This is amazing. This is a milestone for people talking in Florida. Anyway, let's turn it back to Sarah for any concluding remarks from Florida House.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Sanberg, for participating today. And thank you to Richard Miles for being our moderator. Dr. Sanberg, I thought your comments about Florida having an upward trajectory and making a big splash in the research field was just really insightful and inspiring for Florida growth. I want to thank everyone who was able today. We will be hosting an Inventor series every Tuesday, so make sure you invite your friends for next week. We are excited to see you all next week for our next Phoebe Miles, who is the founder of the Cade Museum and who's one of the inventors of Gatorade. So Phoebe and Richard Miles will be broadcasting from Florida House. So thank you again to Dr. Sanberg and Richard Miles, and we hope you had a great time. Florida House on Capitol Hill, where you are always welcome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed it.